to my YouTube channel TechAJ, where we discuss different microcontroller related circuits, its Proteus design, and observe the simulation output. So please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notifications about my newly uploaded videos. For any query, you can reach out to me through a mail. PIC microcontroller has 5 ports, okay? And those ports are represented by some letters. So here we can observe there is a port A, okay? Some pins of port A, which are represented as the RA. Okay? So port pins are indicated by the letter starting with R. So whenever we find RA, it is nothing but port A. Similarly for port B, RB, and so on. So R letter is always indicating that it is a port. Now, after the RA, there is a number again, RA0. That is nothing but port A, pin number 0. RA1, that is port A, pin number 1, in this way. So here, if you observe, the pin numbers of port A are from RA0 to the RA5. Okay? That is nothing but port A of PIC microcontroller is having only 6 pins. So RA0 to say 5, these are the 6 pins. Pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay? Similarly, there are port E, which is having only 3 pins, that is RE0, RE1, and RE2. Whereas if you go to the port B is having 8 pins, RB0 to the RB7. Similarly, port D is also having the 8 pins, okay? Not continuously present. RD7, RD6, RD5, RD4. Then we can find here RD3, 2, and RD0 and RD1. Similarly, port C. Okay? So port C pins are also not continuous. RC0, RC1, RC2, RC3. Then we have RC4, 5, 6, and 7. So we can say that port B, C, and D, these ports are 8 pins. All these 3 pins ports are having 8 pins. That is from pin number 0 to the pin number 7, and port E is having only 3 pins. So here same thing has been mentioned that PIC18F4550 is a 40 pin IC and it is having total 33 pins for the ports. Okay? 5 ports, that is port A, B, C, D, E. This 33 pins is nothing but 6 plus 8 pins of port B, 8 pins of port C, 8 pins of port D, and 3 pins of a port E. So if we add all these pins, we'll get the total 33 number of pins. Not all the ports has 8 pins. As we said, port A is having only 6 pins, port B, C, D are having 8 pins, and port E is having 3 pins. Before starting with the programming, we should know how many pins each port has, and accordingly we can select which port we have to use for which functionality. If I have to write the program for the LCD is having 8 data lines. So to send the data on 8 data lines, I have to select the port which can send 8-bit value at a time. So at that time, I can only use interface data lines of LCD to the port BCD. Okay? But pin number RS, RW, these are the single individual pins for which I can use the 6-pin port, that is port A can be used, port E can be used, or we can go for the port BCD, any pin of a port BCD. Now, to configure these ports or to send logic 0, logic 1 on that port, to make that port input port, output port, PIC microcontroller has 3 special function registers. Special function registers are nothing but SFR. Okay, so this port or each port of PIC microcontroller has 3 SFR registers. These registers are nothing but thrice register, that is nothing but tri-state register. Then latch register, that is the latch register which will latch the value, and port register. Okay, so every port of PIC microcontroller has 3 registers. One is the thrice, another is the latch, and third one is the port. Now, what is the need of these registers for the port? Whenever we have to set the data direction of any port, we have to use the thrice register. For example, I want port A as the input port. That means it will accept the input. Okay. So to set the direction of port A as the input, we have to use the thrice register of port A. Okay. Similarly, if my port B wants to send some output value, okay, so my port B should be the output port. To make port B as the output port, we have to use the thrice register of a port B. Okay. Every register, port A also has the thrice register, port B also has the thrice register. Similarly, port C, D, E also has their own thrice register. Okay. So we can say whenever I have the port A, it is having its own thrice register, latch register, and port register. So purpose of thrice register is to set the direction, whether my port is input port or output port. Now, how to set the direction? If we write into the thrice register 0, okay, that port will be become an output port. Okay, and if we write 1, that port will be acting as the input port. So simply easy to remember. Okay, so 0 for output, that is O, and 1 to set the direction of input, that is I. So these two you can easily correlate and keep in mind to remember these things. So writing 0 into the thrice register makes that particular port output port, and writing 1 into the thrice register makes that particular port as an input port. Now latch. Now I have set the direction of port B as the output port. Okay. If my port B is the output port, my microcontroller should send either logic 0 on this pin or logic 1 on this pin. Okay. So whatever data sent by the microcontroller on this port has been sent by using the latch register. Okay. So whenever microcontroller wants to send some data at the output port, microcontroller uses latch register of that port. And lastly, port register to read the input data. If my port C is the input port, externally we'll send logic 0 on this port, logic 1 on this port. So to read the value on the input port, microcontroller uses the port register. Okay. So in short, simply you have to keep in mind thrice register to set the direction, whether the port is output port or input port. Latch register to send the data on the output port. Whenever my port is output port, to send or to write the data on the output port, latch register is used, and port register to read the data on an input port. Whenever my port is input port, to read that data on an input port, port register is used. Now, as I said, every port has their own 3 registers. Port A, the thrice register of port A is nothing but thrice A. Port register is port A, and latch register is lat A. Similarly, port B has its own thrice register. So thrice B, port B, lat B, these are the registers of port B. Port C, thrice C, port C, lat C, and so on. So in this way, every port has their own thrice register. Okay. the last letter of thrice register indicates the port. Okay. If we are saying thrice A, that is nothing but it is a data direction register of port A. Similarly, B indicates it is the data direction register of port B, and so on. Similarly, every port has a port register, and every port has a lat register. Okay. So last letter always indicates which port this register belongs. Port B, C, D, these three ports are 8-bit ports. So thrice B is an 8-bit register. Port B is also 8-bit. Lat B is also 8-bit. Okay? Because the ports associated with these registers are 8-bit ports. Similarly, port A is a 6-bit port. So all these three registers are 6-bit registers. And port A is 3-bit register, 3-bit port. So these three registers associated with the port E are the 3-bit register. Okay. Now, how these three registers are used, to understand this, let's go through one example. Okay. So this is my microcontroller. In this microcontroller, suppose we are having this port B. Okay. These are the 8 pins of port B. Suppose this is the pin number 0, then pin number 1, I'll write here. Okay. So this is pin number 0, pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. These are the 8 pins of a port B. Okay. Now internally, this port is having 3 different registers, as we said. One is the thrice register, which is thrice B, because it is of port B. Then second one is the port register, that is port B, and latch register, that is lat B. Now, I want the direction, I want to set the direction of these pins of port B. To set the direction, we have to use the thrice register. Okay. Now, as my port is 8-bit port, every register is also 8-bit port, 8-bit register, and every bit, okay, thrice B register. This is the bit number 0, okay, bit number 1, bit number 2, bit number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. These are the 6 bits or 8 bits of thrice register. Okay, every bit corresponding to every pin. Okay? That is nothing but bit 0 represents the pin number 0. Bit 1 represents the pin number 1, and so on. Last bit number 7 represents the pin number 7 of port B. So every bit is associated with the every pin of a microcontroller. So what we write at this location will affect the pin number 0. Whatever we write at that particular bit position of thrice register will affect the direction of this pin. Okay, how it will affect, that we'll see. Suppose I will write bit number 7 of thrice register 0. Okay, thrice register is used to set the direction. Okay, 0 means input direction or output direction. 0 is nothing but output, because it is similar to the O. Okay? And 1 means input, it is similar to the I of the input. So if I write bit number 7 of thrice register 0, what will do? Writing 0 in the thrice register will make its corresponding pin. इसका corresponding pin कौन सा है? Pin number 7. The direction of pin number 7 will be set as the output pin. Okay? Similarly, if I write 0 to the bit number 4, its corresponding pin, that is pin number 4, its direction will be set to the 0. Okay? So in this way, if I write 0 to the particular bit of thrice register, its corresponding pin direction will be set to the output direction. So I have written 0 at bit position 7, 4 and 1. So these three pins will be acting as the output pin of a microcontroller. So if I make all bits are 0 from trace register, what will happen? क्या होगा? All pins of a port 0 will be acting as the output. Okay? सारे पिन आउटपुट हो गए, मतलब microcontroller can send the data output on this pin, but microcontroller cannot read the input, okay? Because this is the output pin, so microcontroller cannot read from this pin, but microcontroller can send the data on this pin. Okay? So this is the meaning of output pin of a microcontroller. Clear है? If I write 0 into the trace register, its corresponding pin will be output. अगर मैंने सारे bit में 0 लिखा, so all the pins of port will be acting as the output port. This is 8-bit register. So what we have to do? Simply convert this value into the hexadecimal and send that value into the trace register. Okay? All bits are 0, so 0x 0 0. Okay? So if we write trace B is equals to 0x00, my port B will be acting as the output port, or all the pins of port B is acting as the output pin. Okay? So in this way, the direction of particular port and its pin has been set. Similarly, if we take another example, suppose this is my microcontroller and these are the 8 pins of port B. Okay? So as we said, it is having trace B register, port B register and lat B register. Okay? Now, if I make any particular bit of trace B1, its corresponding pin will be acting as the input pin of a microcontroller. So if I write 0 here, that is bit number 7, pin number 7 will be the input pin of a microcontroller. Similarly, if I write 1 to the next bit, its corresponding pin will be acting as the input pin. If I make all the bits of trace register 1, all the pins of a microcontroller will be acting as the input. Okay? So when I have to make all the pins of port B input direction, what value I have to write into the trace B register? If you convert it into the hexadecimal, this will form the F, okay, and this 4-bit will form the F. Okay? So if you write trace B is equals to 0xFF, all the pins of port B will be acting as the input pins of a port B. Okay? Now, not necessarily every time I want all the pins of port B either input pins or output pins. Sometimes I need some pins as the output pins and some pins as the input pin. In that case, what I have to do? I have to write value into the trace B register in such a way that whichever pin I want output, write 0, and whichever pin I want input, write 1. For example, suppose if I want these 4 pins as the output pins. Okay? So to make these 4 pins output, so I have to write 0 at this position. Okay? Similarly, if remaining pin I want to set as the input pin, पिन नंबर 3 पे भी मुझे इनपुट ही चाहिए, तो 3 also I have to set to the 1, और बिट नंबर 0 और 1 भी इनपुट ही है, तो यहाँ पे भी मुझे 1 लिखना पड़ेगा. Okay? So in this way, if I want this as the output, okay, and remaining as the input, बाकी के मेरे सारे इनपुट है. So I have to set this value into the trace B. So what will be the value of trace B in this case? इस केस में trace B की वैल्यू क्या होनी चाहिए? This, if you convert into the hexadecimal, this is 8 and this is B. Okay? So we have to load into the trace B register 0x8B. What about port and lat? उसको कैसे यूज करना है? Now suppose I have set the value of thrice B register 0x00. Okay, मतलब मेरे सारे पोर्ट बी के सारे पिंस आउटपुट डायरेक्शन है। अब मुझे माइक्रो कंट्रोलर को क्या करना है, इन पिन पे लॉजिक सेंड करना है। माइक्रो कंट्रोलर दो ही लॉजिक सेंड कर सकता है किसी भी आईओ पिन पे। okay? Either microcontroller can send the logic 0, okay, or microcontroller can send the logic 1. So to send that logic states, lat register is used. Okay, whenever I write 0 into the lat register, its corresponding pin will get the logic 0. उसके corresponding pin पे logic 0 send हो जाएगा। okay? If I write 1, suppose at this bit position I write 1, उसके corresponding pin पे logic 1 send हो जाएगा। okay? So in this way, whatever data will write into the latch register, that will be sent on the pin. अब I have written the value 0 1 1 0 1 0 1 1. Okay, so accordingly that value will be sent on the port pin. So these corresponding pins will have the logic 1 and remaining pins will have the logic 0. Okay? Okay? If my port pin direction is output, then only this latch value will be available at that pin. अगर इसकी डायरेक्शन आउटपुट नहीं है तो वट एवर वी राइट इन टू द लैच विल नॉट चेंज द वैल्यू ऑफ दिस पिन। उस पिन की वैल्यू चेंज नहीं हो सकती अगर मेरे पोर्ट पिन की डायरेक्शन आउटपुट नहीं। दैट्स व्हाई फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई हैव टू सेंड 0 into the thrice B to set the logic or to set the port direction as the output. Okay, और once मेरा पोर्ट पिन की डायरेक्शन आउटपुट है, I can send any value or any logic level by simply writing into its corresponding bit of lat register. Okay? So in this way, lat register is used to send or to write the value on a port pin. Yes, if I have to send this value on the port, I have to write into the lat B register 6B. So if we write into the lat register 6B, on this pin we'll get the logic 0, logic 1 and so on. Okay? So in this way, lat register is used to send output data. Okay? Opposite is the port register. Okay? Whenever my port pins are in an input direction, मेरे port pin का direction input है, okay? And externally, suppose कोई sensor हो, that sensor is sending the data to this pin. Suppose my sensor is sending the data 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1. How microcontroller will read the pin status? पिन पे जो डेटा आ रहा है इनपुट वो रीड करने के लिए पोर्ट रजिस्टर होता है। okay? Whenever port direction is input, whatever data present at the pin, पिन पे जो भी डेटा होगा automatically taken as an input and present in a port register. Okay? So in this way, to read the input data, port register is used. Okay? So whatever we give the input on this port, microcontroller will read by using the port register.